Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. Merry Christmas, Calum. Merry Christmas to all of you tuning in. Despite what's been going on, it has been a good Christmas. Well, for me anyway. Calum, I hope it was the same for you.
Well, I somewhat ruined Christmas testing positive on Christmas Eve. But we still had a good time. It was still nice. We can rearrange with the rest of the family for another time, I'm sure. But yes, thank you very much. Other than that, pretty good Christmas. Glad you had a good one. Hope everyone at home tuning in did too.
Yeah, well, sorry to hear you decided to ruin Christmas for your family, but that's one way of getting out on seeing maybe aunties and uncles that you didn't want to see over the festive period, and certainly one way of spending your whole annual leave. I'm sure you didn't have many exciting plans, but regardless of that, did Santa treat you well?
Santa did treat me very well. Oh, I'm trying to think now. I mean, just clothes and money, mate. Standard.
Yeah, indeed. Very much the same at my end, including for those of you tuning in, this fine Aberdeen top. It's not actually a match top. It's kind of, those like casual Don's gear, as my friend Ian Watson called it. And for those of you watching, it is the person that I got it from through Etsy. They've also offered to give us a t-shirt. I'm wearing the white, and it's got Aberdeen in white writing surrounded by a red background, and it also comes in black and red as well. And the person that has created the t-shirt has offered to give us one for a giveaway, so we're going to do that in January. Link to our Twitter account at @RTG_podcast. So it'll be, retweet this tweet to for a chance to win the top. And if you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, if not, why not? Make sure you do. That'll give you a bonus entry into the competition for a chance to win this t-shirt, and we'll get that arranged for the winner. So stay tuned for that. But Calum, we did have a match despite all that is going on and the restrictions on Boxing Day. 500 fans allowed into Pittodrie. And despite the restrictions, there was a few technical issues with Red TV, which were very frustrating to say the least.
I know, when you're locked out of the game in real life, not that I would have been able to be there anyway, regardless. That just continues when you're at home, not able to stand up and, applaud the teams coming out of the tunnel. Like, I would have wished, come on, you Reds, from home. Very, very annoying. A combination, ended up missing the first two goals of the game, fantastic. And then a combination of his goal, which when you're trying to watch it with your family and your mum and your dad, it's not great given the adverts that are renowned with his goal. But we got the combination between that and Red TV eventually got us through the first half and saw me through to the end of the game. But I have seen the goals. I've caught up with them after Red TV decided to poo the bed.
Yeah, and thankfully we can't be blamed for missing the opening 15 minutes through our own incompetence for a change. It's Red TV's incompetence, which is quite frustrating given that it's the second match in a row that there has been technical difficulties around the Red TV link anyway. Apparently a surge in demand was the cause for the server going down, which is quite poor given there was likely to be a surge in demand given what was preceding the match. And also preceding the match, Dundee failed in postponing the match. Their request for a postponement was turned down by the SPFL. Dundee travelled north with just 14 fit players. What could go wrong, Calum? I remember us asking, and when the notification came through that Lee Griffiths had put Dundee 1-0 up, I was thinking, well, we're going to regret saying that. But yeah, they travelled north with 14 fit players, as I said, 2 goalkeepers having to be named on the bench, including one down as an outfield player. And former St Johnstone defender Dave Mackay, the current Dundee assistant manager, named as an outfield player, even though he hasn't played since 2016.
Yeah, it was a bit mental. To be fair, I can understand Dundee's frustrations entirely, to be fair. If that was us and, we've got to name Alan Russell on the bench or something ridiculous, that would be pretty frustrating. But funny, though. Still funny. Very cinch, isn't it? It was labelled a mockery. I think, on Sports Scene by Stuart Kettlewell, which... it's understandable, and given there's 5 slots, like the game could have been rearranged for, and only 500 in the ground anyway. No travelling fans, not too much of an inconvenience to postpone it. But it was still funny. It was still funny regardless of that, despite how ridiculous it was. And it was interesting that they named Dave Mackay on the bench. And I would have thought maybe they would have done the same with James McPake, considering he retired not as long ago. But regardless, unfortunately, it didn't come to Dave Mackay coming on for comedy reasons, but would have been pretty silly.
Yeah, I do have a degree of sympathy for Dundee around the situation. I kind of echo the thoughts. If the shoe was on the other foot, we'd have been up in arms about why the game wasn't postponed. But look, the SPFL said if you've got 13 fit players, including a goalkeeper, then the game must go on, and that Dundee met that criteria. So look, them's the rules, I suppose. The game went on, and thankfully, Calum, for us, we made hard work of it, but we got there in the end.
We did. Them's the rules, though. Who do you think you are?
Don't know. I was trying to be funny. I'm failing miserably as always. But as always, we will look at the team news for this game. Joel Lewis making his 250th appearance for Aberdeen. That takes him 3 off being inside the top 50 all-time appearance holders for the club. A good milestone given Calum probably the early form he was suffering in, and just shows how well he's fought back from that.
Yeah, definitely. Just dropping out of the team, perhaps if it wasn't for that poor form, then he would have maybe already had 250 appearances. But a good milestone. Someone who's been around the club a long time. I feel a good ambassador for the club. So always nice to see him heading towards that milestone and breaking it at the top 50. That's pretty special.
Yeah, good ambassador. That's a good word. I was going to say a good servant as well. Look at us go. Ross Mccrory, unsurprisingly, returning into the centre of defence for Declan Gallagher after his performance on Wednesday night left a few question marks. And Teddy Jenks and Calvin Ramsey also returned to the starting 11, replacing J. Emmanuel Thomas and Dean Campbell. No surprises around those three inclusions.
Not especially. I think maybe harsh. It was maybe harsh for J. Emmanuel Thomas to miss out, but at the same time, given Jenks' recent performance and contributions, maybe probably worthy of a start. No complaints really. In fact, thank goodness Ross Mccrory was fit, able to go back in. Sorry, because Declan Gallagher. It's a curious case.
Yeah, curious case indeed, and stay tuned for later on in the episode as we come to the 2021 Red Tinted Glasses Awards, where we'll be taking a look back at the year that has been following Aberdeen as we cover some of our highlights. Yes, really, there has been some form of highlights, and we look at our outstanding player, worst player, underperforming player, and so on. So stay tuned for that. But Calum, you said it was great to see Ross Mccrory back into the starting 11, but it was actually him that conceded the free kick that led to the opening goal of the game. A somewhat soft award.
Yeah, I would probably say so, but it's Lee Griffith's recent experience, I suppose, knows exactly what he's doing to win the free kick. I think soft, but we can't have too many complaints. And boy, did Lee Griffiths make us pay.
Yeah, and it's probably soft, but it's probably in the area of the pitch that you think that's okay. It's quite a distance out from goal. Surely we should be able to, stop something like that, but not when you rifle about 200 mile an hour. Surprised it didn't take the net off the goal. It was hit that hard. But looking back at the goal last night when I was watching the roundup on Sky Sports, my one complaint, and it is, very loosely, I'll use the word complaint, is if you watch the angle from behind the goal, Johnny Hayes is standing directly in front of Joel Lewis and has a gap to the three-man wall, which is exactly where the ball is rifled through, albeit Lee Griffiths is a superb technique with the outside of his boot. But Joel Lewis, for some reason or another, decides to stand behind Johnny Hayes. So it's almost like peering over Johnny's shoulder. So he's not even, fully set to move. And it was, like I said, it's just a slight complaint because you really can't take anything away from the technique and power that Lee Griffiths applied to the ball. But for me, it just didn't look particularly clever from our point of view. Johnny Hayes just randomly standing there, the ball going through that gap. And if, he'd been there, Lee Griffiths maybe had to go around the wall or over the wall. And then Joe Lewis, the fact that he chose to stand directly behind Johnny Hayes. I know he's not the tallest, but it's obviously obscured his view slightly.
Yeah, I think as much as I'd love to take something away from Lee Griffiths, we can't really, unfortunately, with that goal. And as you mentioned, the setup a little bit frustrating, but regardless, it's a great strike. I think it's probably more frustrating that he was described to have class on Red TV. I'm not sure class in Lee Griffiths, given some alleged off-field antics, are perhaps, maybe the word is maybe not perhaps the word I would use, but regardless, fantastic strike. And to be fair, even if Joe Lewis positioned correctly, probably would not have stopped it.
No, not with that speed. Like I said, it was a very loosely termed complaint around our setup from that, but I'm sure it will be looked at. But Calum, as you know, when you text me after I sent the screenshot of the Dundee tweet about how they were travelling north, and you said, surely we can't cock this up. I thought, well, we're finding new ways of doing so. But thanks to Red TV's technical issues, we didn't see the immediate response from Aberdeen. And I suppose it's probably relief that we did respond so quickly with Ryan Hedges grabbing that goal and getting us back into the game on level terms.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be fair, Ryan Hedges, right foot klaxon alert, can we mention? I mean, goodness me, after we slagged him off for being like one of the most one-footed players ever, okay, maybe not a great strike with prowess or poise, but did enough. And thank goodness we bounced back quickly, because if that game went on and we didn't bounce back with immediate effect, I worry whether we'd have seen it. Well, we've seen it so many times. We'd have grown frustrated and probably the final ball and would have ended up even worse. But thank goodness for Ryan Hedges' right foot, and that is a sentence I never thought I would say. Yeah,
just a shame he forgot to know how to use it for the rest of the game as the game went on. But hey, at least he used it at the vital moment to get us back into the game. Teddy Jenks providing the assist for the goal. That is his third involvement in terms of 2 assists and 1 goal in his last 4 appearances for the club, Calum. Justifying maybe his start in the game?
I think so, yeah. Pretty good statistic. A lot of goal contributions recently. As I said, probably deserved that start. And it paid dividends, obviously. Teddy Jenks is another curious case. He seems to be picking up form now. At times, he dropped out the team. We didn't see him involved for a while, and you questioned his role. I certainly didn't question his role in the team for what he actually does. But seeing him get up in support of those forward players now brings more understanding, and it's clearly working. It's paying dividends, and whether we'll keep him beyond January, I think the deal is to the end of the season, but obviously probably presumably have a chance to recall him. But he's a player I'd like to see stick around until the end of the season anyway, especially if certain individuals leave.
Yeah, no, and we'll come on to that later in the show as we look ahead to the January transfer window. But certainly, yeah, I know I've been critical of him. I'll hold my hands up. I think I called him a ghost on this podcast earlier in the season. So, fair play to him. And he's certainly a player that I think deserves credit for, knuckling down. You look at other Premier League loan players that have come to Aberdeen this season. No, not just Matty Longstaff. I'm looking at the one from Wolves as well. Teddy Jenks found himself out of the team. He's obviously maybe showed a bit of desire on the training ground and, deserved his place in the team on the back of that. And then he's restored the faith that Stephen Glass has shown him by contributing positively to the team in recent weeks. And, we're hopefully going in the right direction and we see the best out of him as we move into 2022. So that'll be only good. Ryan Hedges, however, as we said, got us back on the score sheet. Calum, do you think that could be the last goal he scores for Aberdeen?
Well, I did think that at the time, and the fact is the 2 players that scored, I'm thinking is it the perfect send-off? I think perhaps, it could be, especially given how long into January the sort of winter break / shutdown, whatever it is now. I don't know what you want to call it. How long it is. I hope it's not, though. I don't know. I keep to and froing about whether take the money now, reinvest it, or keep it to the end of the season, because he does pop up in moments like that. And I think perhaps between now and the end of the season, if he stays there, even if he goes at the end of the season, signs a pre-contract, whatever, there probably will be another game like that where he pops up with something vital which proves his worth and, earns us points, some much needed points.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I'm kind of the exact same as you. Do we take the money and run right now, or you kind of see sometimes, players maybe signing a pre-contract and then you never see the best out of them because they're almost protecting themselves from being injured for their new club. Look at what Motherwell did with Tony Watt around his transfer speculation. He got benched, albeit, they did go on to get the win at the weekend. But it's kind of one of those catch-22 scenarios where you have to do what's right by the club. You don't want a player just sitting around the club with his mind elsewhere. And I suppose to pick up that point you just made about if he does stay, it's maybe a point that's been made quite often. And, Willie Garner said that when I spoke to him. If you want to check out that interview, look back in the archives for that, is hopefully we see a bit more consistency from Ryan in the second half of the season, again, providing if he stays, because Boxing Day, that was only his second league goal of the season. And yes, he is a creative player, but he's maybe not provided the amount of goals we would have maybe hoped for from a creative player this season. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would think so. At times, I think the phrase often associated with Ryan Hedges is flatters to deceive. But which I don't know when people at home can decide whether they think that's fair or not. But looking at the two league goals that he's contributed, I think perhaps consistency is key. And I think regardless of whether he stays or whether he goes, he needs to add that to his game. For example, if it is Blackburn that he goes to, even if it's a pre-contract now and he joins at the end of the season, they're going to want to look at him performing well in the league, not just protecting himself, so he can, carry on where he left off down there. So I think if he does stay, then perhaps it's stay until the end of the season, and maybe we have that to look forward to. Kenny McLean, another one that perhaps, when he got that move to Norwich, maybe even had his best 6 months when he's back here on loan. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll be interesting.
The thing that strikes me about the Blackburn interest is the form that they're currently on in the English Championship, sitting third and obviously looking to push on and get promoted into the Premier League. And I don't know, again, people listening at home might disagree with this, but I don't see Ryan Hedges being Premier League quality, in my personal opinion. But never know. The game maybe down south suits him better than the game up here.
Now, I could be wrong here, so I'm going to do some quick research, and I believe it could possibly be Tony Mowbray that is in charge at Blackburn. And I believe I saw him saying that they may need to sell assets in January, which perhaps would then make way for Ryan Hedges. It is Tony Mowbray, which is interesting also, given who is
his brother.
Yes,
is
exactly.
Head of recruitment Aberdeen.
Very interesting. And I've also seen them now linked to John Suter on a potential pre-contract too. But I think if maybe they need to clear out some players, maybe need to get in some funds, then that's maybe going to make way for Ryan Hedges, and they might maybe settle for a playoff spot. Is he enough for that? Maybe. Who knows? Yeah,
who knows? I'm sure followers of English football will know the rise of Brent Brereton Diaz, who's been banging the goals for Blackburn this season.
And Chile.
I'm sure and Chile. And I'm sure he will certainly earn Blackburn a few million. So that'll again be an interesting one, I suppose, from an Aberdeen point of view. If Blackburn do look to buy Ryan Hedges, I know there are other clubs being linked with an interest, Middlesbrough, for example, being one. But if the likes of Blackburn do suddenly come into a bit of money, can the club play a bit of hardball and get the best value? It's always kind of one of these hard things with 6 months left on their contract. How much money can you get for an asset like Ryan Hedges? But if Blackburn were to get, a few million, well, maybe you're looking maybe 20 million, the price that you get down in England. Can Aberdeen try and play a bit of hardball? Dave Cormack speaks about the financial difficulties that have been over the last 18 months to 2 years, given the whole COVID situation. So perfect opportunity if clubs come into a bit of money and you're wanting to, obviously we don't want to sell our best players, thinking about Calvin Ramsey as well, but try and play hardball as much as we can when it comes to these transfer windows. But yeah, certainly an interesting link given the Mowbray brothers. Will be interesting to see how that pans out over the next few weeks. Back to the game though, Callum, the rest of the half, that first half at Pittodrie on Sunday was fairly passive, it's fair to say. Not enjoyable, especially being stuck at home watching behind a screen, proving once again why football just isn't the same without fans, or a decent number of fans in the ground, as Aberdeen really struggled to break down Dundee's resilient defence.
It was absolutely rubbish. Eventually, when I get to see the game via He's Goal, allegedly He's Goal, and Red TV, then there's no goals, nothing exciting happened, no 30-yard belters, nothing. It was pretty bad. I think passive is a very good word to use. Thankfully, we then upped it slightly in the second half, but yeah, it was poor. And but at the same time, when there's no crowds to give you that lift as well, I guess it can be somewhat expected. I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, and that first half especially, we were attacking the Red Shed, and there were obviously no fans in the Red Shed on Saturday. And there was times when I felt like when we were coming forward, we were looking lively around the edge of the box, but similar to the midweek game against Hibs, it was that final pass, that final ball which just let us down. Or Ojo and Ramsey linking up for the first time in a while down that right hand side, they just weren't on the same wavelength. Either the pass was overhit for Ramsey, or they chose to come inside or backwards instead of driving into the space further forward that was, afforded them. And yeah, just massively frustrating to watch. You look at the overall match stats, or the data, to quote Dave Cormack, and 18 shots in total for Aberdeen on Boxing Day, just 3 on target. Quite worrying, and especially, as maybe expected given the predicament Dundee found themselves in. We had 73% possession of the ball, but very little to show from it.
Yeah, I mean, to just test not even test the goalkeeper, I suppose, since 2 of them were on target. We only had 1 other shot on target that wasn't a goal. That's a big concern. It certainly doesn't feel like we had 18 attempts in total. I think you're right in terms of sometimes the final ball is still just lacking a little bit. Not sure what the cause of that is, because by this point you should think these things have clicked. Players familiar with the style they're meant to be playing, familiar with each other. Just frustrating though. However, thankfully in the end, I suppose it didn't cost us, and we got in a game like that 3 points that were much needed, regardless of any which way that they came. Yeah,
it's funny because I know there was a few folk that said, you can't just say, it's just 3 points at the end of the day. Like, doesn't matter how you get them. But in those sort of games, when the pressure is on Aberdeen, or the expectancy is on Aberdeen to go and win the game, given the circumstances around the opposition, I think in the end of the day, you are just massively relieved at getting them, especially when you look at the manner in which we collapsed at Dens Park earlier in the season. It's just nice to get a bit of revenge on the Dens Park side. And also a positive from the game itself was the start to the second half, because in recent weeks, Callum, I felt we've been very poor, lethargic even in our approach to the second 45. But maybe it was a rocket up the backsides from Stephen Glass in the changing rooms, but we really came out all guns blazing, attacking Dundee from the off, and unfortunately, though, didn't find that breakthrough.
Yeah, I mean, as has often been the case for us, but I think it is positive that, as you say, for once, that we actually did come out in the second half with intent, with a bit of urgency, trying to make things happen, which for most of the season perhaps probably isn't the case. But it's positive. As you say, we didn't end up getting the breakthrough there, but eventually it did come. So it's a weird thing to take positive, not scoring a goal against that Dundee side in the opening exchange of the second half, but I'm going to take it, feeling festive, feeling merry. So there we go. You're welcome for that one at home.
Yeah. It wasn't for the want of trying, though. Corners from Calvin Ramsey, where unless he was trying to score directly from them, didn't seem to be overly effective. And the less said about Johnny Hayes' attempts to get the ball into the box at times were also increasing the frustration from watching behind the laptop and TV screens. It was just one of those performances, certainly from touched on there, about the delivery into the box, where you just felt, is it going to be one of those days?
It did have that feel about it, especially at some points in the second half with McLennan and Hayes on that left-hand side between them, seeing who can cock it up first and try to get the ball across. But thankfully it did not end up being one of those days, but it certainly did have that feel about it. And the more it went on, you sort of thought, oh, we're never going to score here. And then it wouldn't have surprised me if Dundee got one chance and Griffiths then took it. Who'd be fat to get through 90 minutes in that shape. I don't want to give him credit, but I almost have to.
And you mentioned Conor McLennan there. He was introduced for Teddy Jenks, who's had a largely quiet second half, although it's not really much of a second half because it was, barely 10 minutes. And Conor McLennan, we're going to come on to the January transfer window segment after we finished reviewing this game, but he's kind of the player that emphasises maybe the importance of, one, either keeping Ryan Hedges, or secondly, identifying another creative player that we so desperately need if we're going to lose Ryan Hedges. Because I think we saw both the good and the bad of Conor McLennan on Boxing Day. Conor, got himself into space, looked to create, but the standout chance before we, went and got what proved to be the winner was when Ryan Hedges played an excellent through ball to him. He just failed to control it first time, and the ball ended up going out for a corner. And you just couldn't help but thinking, I know I tweeted out from my own account, was that it was anybody but McLennan in that space getting that chance would have done a better job.
Yeah, as much as I want to give, I don't want to be too harsh on him. At times I do question how these things keep on happening, because he gets himself into the right spaces. He's direct at times, which is exactly what we need. He came on against St Johnstone for the final sort of 10 minutes and provided a great out ball, holding the ball up as well at times. But then he just seems to repeatedly get the ball stuck between his feet, or it's like he takes his eye off the ball and just totally miscontrols it. It takes a huge touch or whatever. I don't know how it keeps happening. You would have thought that would have been out of system by now. At, what is he, 22, I think? It's frustrating. I suppose at times it's probably hard coming in when you're a bit part player and you're not playing regular football. But there's only so many times, I suppose, you can make that excuse for not trapping that ball there. I guess it might come down to a lack of sharpness, but regardless, he should be able to control a simple pass like that, and a potentially very good move too. It's just even more frustrating. Yeah,
and I suppose that you're absolutely right in that sort of move. It becomes frustrating, but in the type of game that we were kind of almost being dragged into, it became more frustrating because we were struggling to create chances despite what the stats may show. Clear-cut chances, let's say, because I think some of those 18 shots were restricted to from distance, and I'll show not many even testing Adam Legzdon's. And when we did test Adam Legzdon's, he was very much crisp packet hands. To quote a former goalkeeper of ours, not naming any names because, well, even if I do, he's blocked me anyway, because that's about the only thing he did block during his time in Aberdeen, was when Lewis Ferguson managed to get a shot on target from outside the box, and it goes through Adam Legzdon's hands into the back of the net. And probably more sense of relief than anything when that ball hits the back of the net, Callum.
First of all, you leave him alone. I have fond memories growing up with the goalkeeper in my youth. Not really sure why. I just have fond memories of everyone around that time. But moving on, thankfully, there was no excuse. I mean, it was a decent strike. It was probably an awkward height, you might describe, for Lewis Ferguson's good power behind it. But he's got to do better there. He's not their starting goalkeeper, is he? No.
Yeah, he is.
He is. Oh, goodness me. It's January coming up, Dundee fans. Let's hope you get a new goalkeeper as a late Christmas present from Santa. It was poor, but thankfully we were handed yet another victory thanks to questionable goalkeeping. I'll be interested to know come the end of the season how many of our wins come down to things like that. If you look at Livingston as well, a helping hand from Teddy Jenks against St Johnstone too. Very, very poor. He has to do better there.
Yeah, it does. It's funny. I actually thought it was at a decent enough height for the keeper, but just not a strong enough wrist or a hand to it to kind of push it round the post. Obviously, thankfully for us, we won't complain about that, and it finds the back of the net. And I suppose, that was Conor McLennan finding himself in space down that left-hand side, trying to drill the ball across. And, I've got this down as being kind of the good part of Conor McLennan, but when I watch the highlights back, it's probably the fortunate side of Conor McLennan, because he doesn't even beat the first man with that cross, and it just deflects off of the defender out towards Christian Ramirez, who, tries to control the ball. And I think Ramirez is about to take the shot on the turn. But for those of you that have seen the video that the club have released, and you probably hear it more given that there's pretty much nobody in the ground, that Lewis Ferguson gives him a massive shout to leave the ball. And, thankfully it's a clean connection and it finds the back of the net. And yeah, as I said, huge sense of relief. And we touched on, could that be Ryan Hedges' last goal? Could that be Lewis Ferguson's last goal for Aberdeen Calum?
I think it very well could be. In terms of Conor McLennan, fortunate perhaps, but he did what he needed to do. And for Christian Ramirez, fair play to not block that, because it would have just been typical of Aberdeen for him to get in the way, then to hoof each other or something like that. Something ridiculous. A good strike, as we said, from Ferguson. It will be interesting to see whether that is his final goal for the club. I hope not. I hope we can at least keep him to the end of the season. Just because replacing, if we then lost him and Hedges now, then that just, given how inconsistent we've been, and they've come up with some important goals, it would be very, very frustrating to lose them both. A good strike, and perhaps making up for a poor performance at Easter Road, maybe. You could say, I think he took a little bit more onus in this game against Dundee. He got up forward in support as well, a lot more. And that's just the type of thing you need to see from Lewis Ferguson week in, week out, because he's capable of causing problems. He's a physical player too. And we saw him get behind that strike, and it was enough to put it past crispy per packet hands. Is that right? Crispy per packet? Oh, it's a tongue twister.
That'll do. But it's funny you say that, because that was going to be my question for you, I should say, was after your judgment of Lewis Ferguson on Wednesday, I'll call it, saying that he didn't kind of step up into that kind of leadership role that we would maybe have hoped he did in the absence of Scott Brown. Do you feel he did that more on Boxing Day when the game was, in the balance? Obviously, he did eventually step up to grab that winner, but his comments after the game against Hibs about it being unacceptable losing the goal from the set piece, you could tell he was hurting by that result and by that performance. Do you feel he responded to his own personal criticism that he was, venting out in his post-match interview?
I think so. I think he did step up. He took a little bit more control of the game, try and make things happen as well. Obviously not in the similar sense to Brown, but when you miss his leadership, you'll then turn to even someone so young as Lewis Ferguson, with the experience he has, particularly playing for Aberdeen and coming up in big moments. You turn to someone like him, and I think he did he took accountability, I suppose, for the performance Easter Road, and then not only just the amount of times we've seen Aberdeen players utter these words and then not show it on the pitch. He actually did do that, to be fair, and he did step up, which I think was very much needed in a game like that, because if he didn't, not sure many others out there would have. No,
that's a very valuable point. And I think that, as I said, the goal kind of gave a sense of relief more than anything else. It gave Aberdeen something to hold on to. And for one nervy moment towards the last couple of minutes, I felt we did see it out rather comfortably. That one glimmer of hope for Dundee was when David Bates got hopelessly caught out under the long punt of a free kick from Paul McGowan into the box. Liam Fontaine, it fell to him kindly, and his scuffed shot deflected off Joe Lewis's boot, and thankfully Funso Ojo was there to clear the danger off the line before the prowling Lee Griffiths, in his usual place to just tap home, was beaten to the ball by Funso Ojo. And thankfully we didn't, concede there, because that would have been very calamitous.
It would be very calamitous. Prowling Lee Griffiths is not something I ever want to have to think about ever again, under no circumstances. But thankfully, as you say, Funso King Ojo was there to clean up scraps. Good clearance, and didn't just get enough. He made sure that it was clear. And while sporting some fantastic facial hair as well, it has to be said. Can't quite emulate that myself.
I see you're trying.
Yeah, a combination of, basically just can't be bothered shaving. And now it's got to the point where now it'll be just such an effort, because there's quite a lot of it compared to usual. Can't be bothered. So it's an ode to Funso Ojo, I've decided now.
Okay, well, that's good. Prowling Lee Griffiths, at least it was on the football pitch for a change, not Instagram DMs, I suppose.
I just said alleged stuff. You had to go there.
Yeah. But Calum, I suppose, in the end, the result or performance maybe is eclipsed by the importance of the 3 points. And it ends a quite successful December for the Dons. It's 12 points out of a possible 15, 5 wins from the last 6 outings at Pittodrie. Just that disappointment against Motherwell in that run, that 2-0 defeat. But one question, I suppose, is, yes, the results have been coming now for Aberdeen, but I've just said, the result eclipses the performance. Have the performances in general declined in recent months? Because certainly at the start of the season, we were seeing some excellent football, some excellent performances from the club, but the results, weren't there. But we've almost flipped it on the head. We're winning ugly now.
Which it's difficult, because for a long time we complained about not being entertained, and now we are winning, but we're not being entertained, which is annoying, especially when you're at home and you're not even there to enjoy the ugly win. I think maybe, now Ramsey back, and then hopefully Mackenzie back after the shutdown/winter break, plus some much needed additions in January. Hopefully we can then sort of mould things a little bit better to play towards that style and also get results. Yeah. That's, I'm saying things in hope rather than with any conviction here, which is often the case, to be fair.
Yeah.
But regardless, I think we did need sort of a month like that where we actually won games. As disappointing as the result and performance was at Easter Road, where we didn't even get an ugly win or an ugly point. When was the last time we got 12 points in a month? That's probably what I'm thinking. So, which I don't expect you to have the answer to, because I certainly don't. I'm sure you're not shocked. But no. It's just, it's nice to actually have a fairly positive month in terms of points. And as you say, 4 points now off the European spots. It's not a total disaster. That's not out of reach, is it?
No, it's not. And like you said, they're 4 points off of Europe, which is currently the last European spot in the league, currently occupied by Motherwell. And we find ourselves 2 points above high-flying Dundee United. So the press might tell you, as we finish 2021 sitting in 6th place in the league. Calum, what's been your thoughts on the opening months of the season as we head into the new year?
I've used it a couple of times in this episode. The word I probably use is frustrating, because as we've said, we've played some attractive football at times, not got the results, and then now we're not being entertained or whatever, but we are winning. I think it's still very much a work in progress, this whole Stephen Glass thing. This is probably sort of the type of thing I expected, this sort of roller coaster where we go through patches of good results, patches of bad results. I've still got faith in Mr. Stephen Glass. I think with another window, with an actual recruitment team now, which we'll come on to very shortly, I am positive. And I think with a couple of the right additions, I don't think we need too many wholesale changes. Perhaps get rid of the deadwood and bring in players who will actually push to start in the first team, if not actually start, and sort of raise the levels as a whole. Then we could go on to not only qualify for Europe, but perhaps Scottish Cup, baby. That's what I'm saying.
It's maybe a little insight into the 2021 awards segment that we're coming on to, where one of the categories is our hopes for 2022. So maybe Callum revealing a bit early there what his hopes are for next year. But kind of on the same wavelength as you, Callum, I'd like to see us be a bit more consistent next season. You know, you look at that Hibs result recently, or the Motherwell result that I flagged up in the home forum. We've gone on spells of getting some good results and then just chuck in a terrible result or an unexpected result, maybe, if you don't want me to be over the top about it. It would just like to see a bit more consistency on and off the pitch, and more so on the pitch anyway. And hopefully we can build on that league position into January and February and leave ourselves in a position where, you know, European football remains a possibility come the business end of the season, because certainly, you know, in October it was a pipe dream almost.
Yeah, essentially. That's why I think this sort of month, even though we, you know, dropping points against Hibs, has been so important, because it has sort of kept us in touch. As I said, at times, maybe a pipe dream. The fear was probably that we were going to be totally out of sight in terms of at times probably even the top 6, let alone the European spots. So we are within touching distance. Obviously, still points to make up, and ideally it won't just be the last spot that we do end up in. But we're in an okay spot in terms going into January. Time to improve. We've got a recruitment team. Hopefully it'll be okay, the right additions, and we'll get there.
Yeah. It's like we're just sitting on the shoulder going around the last turn, just waiting to make our move at the right time. Either that or we'll fall horribly backwards and be nowhere to be seen. It's going to be one of the two.
Well, stay tuned to find out, baby.
Indeed. And as Matty Longstaff is recalled by Newcastle, and for those of you that watched the game last night, I know Callum, you will have, and seen his brother put in an unfortunate not to be named man of the match performance. It almost begs to wonder why we never saw the best of Matty Longstaff as he goes back to the northeast of England. And attention probably turns now to Darren Mowbray, second mention for him in the show, and the January transfer window that lies ahead, Callum. A big month in terms of recruitment for the club.
Absolutely massive. Briefly on Newcastle United, there's no chance Matty Longstaff will be getting anywhere near that midfield when you've got his brother and Joe Linton playing so well there. That is the biggest plot twist of 2021 anyway, in my books. But yeah, it is very important that we do make the right additions and that they're not just squad fillers. See perhaps Austin Samuels, and not just him, not just singling him out, but players who will push the first team and be chomping at the bit and just up the standards as a general. Because even if they don't come in and start, if they are of a quality where they could, then all of a sudden those players who are currently being trusted to start realise they need to buck up their idea and they need to improve their standard. So it is very important that we do get this right if we are to push on and qualify for Europe.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed there. And I suppose, you know, we're obviously placing our faith in ahead of recruitment, but I'm sure Longstaff and Samuels were signed after Mowbray was appointed. How involved he was in those signings remains to be seen, but hopefully, well, to be fair, there's only really one direction you can go on those signings, because I'd like to think we can't get much worse. But Callum, what do you feel is needed in the January transfer window? I've got a few positions marked down. Now, this is based on a discussion that I was having last night with a few of my friends. So just going to field these out to you and see what you feel. Right. Left back being one position, given Johnny Hayes' recent performances have come in for some criticism from the Aberdeen support. Jack McKenzie obviously currently injured just now, but maybe jury remains out on him, given he seems to be in a bit of the shadow of Calvin Ramsey, but nothing against Jack personally. And obviously Andy Considine, well documented his injury problem on the road to recovery currently, but again, age is not on his side. Is that an area for you that we should be looking at now or towards the summer?
For me, towards the summer, I'm not certain that it's urgent. I can certainly understand why, for all of the reasons you've mentioned. I think perhaps with McKenzie coming back, basically if he stays fit, we'll be fine. But that is a big if. As we've seen, he came back, then got injured again, being out for a fair time. But I don't see it as needed urgently. Johnny Hayes' performance is not great, but then you also got Dean Campbell, who, to be fair, at times did step in there and do a pretty good job, who can cover. I don't see it as urgent. I think perhaps maybe leaning towards maybe the summer. I've said maybe a lot there. Maybe, definitely maybe. The summer, not urgent for me. I think there's some other areas which we'll come on to, obviously, which maybe will be best looked at in January. But if the perfect player does become available in January, by all means, I'm not going to complain if we snap him up.
No, true. I'll be impressed if someone manages to count how many times you said maybe in that segment there. But I suppose, the argument some people would have on Dean Campbell as being that stopgap for a left back is once again, similar to Considine, is that we're once again not playing a natural left back in that position, I suppose. But one to certainly keep an eye on. It wasn't a position that I had originally earmarked as being needed, but when it came up in discussion, I felt it would be a good talking point for us. But the main position I kind of had was right back. Given the fact that I know Ojo's filled in there reasonably well so far this season in Calvin Ramsey's absence, but his continued performances, certainly at the start of the season, young Calvin Ramsey is going to attract some interest in January. And if he was to go in January, if he was to be lured down south potentially, and Ojo was to get injured or something, I'm not sure who fills in at right back for me right now.
I've got the moves like Jack. He was at the Newcastle game last night actually as well. Interesting. I think also another thing we need to keep in mind is even if Calvin Ramsey does stay, he's still very, very young. And we saw perhaps he gained that injury as a result of, being physically exerted a little too much. I don't see us bringing one in, however, unless Jack Gurr goes. And given he's on a contract at the end of the season, I think they might just keep him as this wishy-washy backup. He was basically third choice after Ojo. What are you laughing at?
I'm just laughing at your use of wishy-washy.
Well, he is really, isn't he? Yeah. He comes in every now and then out the cold and just appears, and then people are surprised when he's bad. But, when you're not involved that much, these things happen, I guess. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know. I would like to just hope that Calvin Ramsey will just not leave. That's basically my one hope here. And then between Gurr and Ojo, you've probably just about got enough at right back as cover. I suppose we'll get on to another position. Then Mccrory might also be available to play at right back.
Yeah, so the next position, I'm going to leave the kind of midfield area till last, but do you feel we need anything up top? Do we need another striker?
Yes. And interestingly, Tony Watt was someone that I maybe thought, because if we brought him in, apparently on mental wages at Dundee United now, by the way, he could sort of fill in as a backup to Ramirez and add a few goals here and there, given he's top goal scorer in the Premiership right now. And then also he can do that Marley Watkins sort of support role as well. So I think that would have been interesting. Probably not the answer, but maybe do you need someone who perhaps comes in and pushes Ramirez more for a start up top? I don't think there's any doubt that we maybe do need another goal threat. But then maybe someone else coming in, pushing Ramirez for a start, then pushes Ramirez on. So I think another striker, probably one way or another, is needed, whether that is an option off the bench or a first choice player.
Very interesting. It wasn't a immediate position I had much concern for in and around the January transfer window anyway.
If Ramirez gets injured, though, then the whole thing is knackered, let's be honest, because Marley Watkins, always susceptible to injury. And then is J. Manuel Thomas going to play up there every week and get you, 10 goals towards the back end of the season? 5 goals even towards the back end of the season? Probably not.
No, that's a fair point. And again, you're hoping that Calvin Ramsey doesn't leave. I'm hoping Christian Ramirez doesn't get injured. So
yep.
we'll see where we are. But another area of the pitch that was brought up in discussion last night was the number 10 role, a kind of role that we haven't really replaced since Ryan Christie and Kenny McLean left the club in terms of that creativity in behind the striker. Don't know if that's kind of the idea Stephen Glass had for Ryan Hedges this season, whether or not it is and has worked out or not. I know there's been links to Jamie McGrath coming in from St Mirren, whether or not he would fit that number 10 role, Callum. Do you think so? Or is that something that we would need in January? We've just spoken about kind of our ineffectiveness in the final third, the first half against Dundee, pretty much the whole game against Hibs. Is that something we need another creative spark in behind the strikers?
I think so. Regardless, whether it's a number 10 or an actual winger, perhaps both, I suppose, if you see Matty Kennedy going out the door, which is probably quite likely. Austin Samuels as well, another one who maybe won't stick around. I think a number 10 offers sort of something different because, Hedges, traditional winger, Watkins, sort of this in-betweeny striker support act kind of thing that, but we need someone a traditional number 10. And I don't know if McGrath maybe is that answer. We've seen him perform pretty well for St Mirren in recent times, capable of coming up with a goal as well. I certainly wouldn't be against it. And it's someone who we know can perform in this league, which is also very important, I think, as we've seen with some of our signings, not the case.
And I suppose if Lewis Ferguson was to leave, then we've got a natural penalty taker coming into the squad as well if he was to sign. But onto the midfield is probably, we seem to be overloaded with midfielders right now, playing out of position. And you look at Ojo, Dean Campbell so far this season. Teddy Jenks has stepped up in recent weeks into midfield. Scott Brown, obviously, to come back from his COVID absence. But as you touched on there, Matty Kennedy, I think will leave in some capacity, whether that is a loan move to try and get some fitness or permanently. I wouldn't be surprised if Austin Samuels joins Matty Longstaff and heading back down to England. It's not worked out for one reason or another. Looked lively, but never had an end product, unless you count an end product of hitting the ball as hard as you can across the face of goal. Is that an area that we need to then, do we go back down to England and pick up another loan signing for 6 months? Or do we look at towards the future? We've got guys out on loan. You're looking at Connor Barron at Kelty, Ryan Duncan at Peterhead, Kevin Henratti, I know it's Highland League, but performing well, scoring again yesterday against Brora in that 4-4 draw. Do we consider them, after the summer and try and find another Teddy Jenks, for example, for 6 months?
I do miss Austin Samuels pelting the ball across the box at God knows what speed, though. Thanks for reminding me of that. That's brought me some joy. In terms of the young players mentioned, I think they probably would be better suited right now after the reserves, or whatever you want to call them these days, had been missing out on football for so long. I think right now they're probably best served being out on loan at their various clubs, just playing until the end of the season. Then come summer, you might look at starting to integrate them. I got there. I mean, another sort of Teddy Jenks signing, it's not going to set the world alight, but it might just be what you need in sort of another supporting role, like he can do in terms of supporting Ferguson, Brown, whoever, if we brought in someone like Jamie McGrath too. But then there's also the possibility that it might turn out for every Teddy Jenks, there's probably, in recent years at Aberdeen, there's been 2 Austin Samuels and Matty Longstaffs. Really.
Yeah, but my concern around the midfield is obviously Scott Brown currently out, and we were just speaking there about Lewis Ferguson and looking to step up. Lewis Ferguson is kind of an imposing figure in terms of an Aberdeen midfield. Again, looking at Scottish football and the Premiership as a whole, I would argue he is an imposing figure. If we were to lose Lewis Ferguson and to lose Scott Brown again to injury or suspension or whatever else towards the second half of the season, it kind of would take me back to last season when our midfield looked a bit powder puff, because I don't see, I know Jenks has had a red card this season, but he's not exactly that hard man you want in the middle of the park. Same applies to Dean Campbell. Doesn't come across as a hard man, probably a very nice man, in fact. And who else would fill that role to give us that bit of bite in the centre of the park?
And then there's probably the likelihood that Dylan McGee also won't be fit, frustratingly. If he was fit, I think he would be able to come in and maybe not obviously provide that hard man sort of that bit of bite in midfield, but the experience maybe to get you through games, perhaps would be quite beneficial.
I suppose you've also got Funzo Ojo. He's definitely a hard man, but he's not exactly been effective in midfield so far this season.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's clear that he's not that sort of holding midfielder that we thought we'd signed when he came in. I don't know. I think maybe that is a position, but then you bring them in and then that injury doesn't happen to Brown or Ferguson or whatever. Then how often will they play? See Matty Longstaff.
Yeah, true. Very true. And I think that'll be an interesting one as the January progresses, is, people might get a bit tetchy that we've not signed anybody, but it will probably likely be we can't bring somebody in until somebody leaves. And I suppose, as critical as we've been of Matty Longstaff, he was probably signed on the provision that Lewis Ferguson was going to leave the club. He never left, and we never showed enough to replace Lewis Ferguson or any of the current starting midfielders that we had. So yeah, certainly interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks coming up. January transfer window is never normally exciting, but I suppose given the season that we've had and the recruitment maybe not being overly exciting in the summer in terms of how they've worked out, certainly a big month coming up for Aberdeen. To touch on, Calum, what we've picked up on the frustration, the inconsistency. Hopefully some key additions, to quote you, in January would level that out as we move into the business end of the season. But as we come to the end of 2021, Calum, it's time to look for the first ever Red Tinted Glasses Awards, and maybe only the first or second time that you've had to actually put in some hard work pre-recording for this show, as I set some categories for these awards and left you to put in some names, and I'll let you give some reasons why to those names as well.
That might seem unfair to people at home. 100% a totally fair assessment. Pre-show, Glenn does all the hard work, and then afterwards I do the editing, and it balances out. It
does, even though in recent weeks we have been pretty seamless. I say before recording this segment, this may differ, but no, it is, like I said, it is evened out because there is a lot of, I'm sure, hard work goes on to that editing, creating the thumbnail, and getting the audio and video uploaded to the various sites. So it is teamwork. Nonetheless, however you want to look at it. But the 2021 awards, we're going to start with the first category, and it's going to be your highlight of 2021. And I know I said at the top of the show it's going to be pretty hard to find a highlight for Aberdeen in 2021, but Calum, have you managed to find one?
I have. Are you going to give one as well? Let's clarify here.
Yes, we'll both be giving.
Okay.
And then the folk at home can leave a comment in the below the video on YouTube, tweet us at RTG_podcast, let us know what your thoughts are on our nominations or who gets them.
Okay, my highlight for 2021 was, imagine the scene. I'll take you back to summer. We just got back to the football after so damn long. It's BK Hacken at home. It was just, I thought we were going to win everything in that game. We were absolutely brilliant. J. Emmanuel Thomas had the hold-up play of, I don't know who holds up the ball well, I don't know anymore. He was just superb, showing fantastic touches. Ramirez, I thought was brilliant, having just come in from America. I was super duper excited. I thought we are just going to win absolutely everything. We're not going to lose a game this season. I am on cloud 9. And it was just nice being back at the game. A good Aberdeen performance. The atmosphere was good. The Red Shed was providing great support. The game against BK Hacken, that specifically, you can maybe narrow down that Ferguson strike, especially. I was just super excited. That game was my highlight of 2021.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think it's. I'm smiling because I remember the review that we did of that game where you confidently predicted we were going to win the quadruple.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks later, that prediction was very much out the window after a trip to Kirkcaldy went horribly wrong on the pitch for Aberdeen and off the pitch for you with your first bout of COVID. So,
round 2, ding, ding, ding.
But my highlight in particular was the second half performance that we put in against Hearts recently. 1-0 down at halftime to currently at the time undefeated Hearts, and you're thinking, I thought we'd done very well that first half. Hearts got a penalty, no complaints on it, and John Suter rammed it home, and you thought this will be the test of Aberdeen. Let's see what this side is made of. And that was, we attacked the Red Shed. The Red Shed got behind the team. We played some scintillating football at times. And that was the first time that I felt that is what Stephen Glass is going to bring to Aberdeen. That is a style of football he's wanted to play. It was just a sense of togetherness in the stands and on the pitch created by that second half performance. So for me, was my highlight of 2021, but I would echo your thoughts as well about just in terms of general fans returning to games. It wasn't the same at Dundee United with the whole socially distanced element, but once we started getting proper full crowds back in, that was great to see. I think it has to be said.
Yeah, to be fair, and you mentioned my second spot as well. That game against Hearts, it was very, very enjoyable, thoroughly enjoyable. And yeah, you're right. I think you saw what we were actually made of and what we were capable of in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully we see more of that next year. Now, the next category is your outstanding player of 2021. Difficult because some players maybe performed excellently for 6 months, or some players maybe, in your opinion, Calum, have performed well throughout the calendar year. So who would be your outstanding player for 2021?
My outstanding player, drum roll please, at home, feel free to take part. Wow, that was good, Glenn, nice one. It's Ross Mccrory. That's who I'm going for. I think he has been our one saving grace, perhaps, in defence for the most part of this season so far. He's featured in a lot of positions, especially going back to the start of 2021 when he was featuring at right centre back at times. He'd been in midfield and then in the middle of the centre backs, and then he's been on the left hand side, despite obviously being naturally right foot. And he just seems to be reliable. And he's not a natural defender, I suppose, as well, but he's really starting to come into his own. And I think he's been fantastic. It's maybe a bit of a stretch, but not many people have been. So I'm going to use it. Fantastic Ross Mccrory. That is my outstanding player of 2021. Glenn, what is yours?
That's a fair comment, I think, on Ross Mccrory. Mine was difficult because I wanted to base it kind of on the whole calendar year. I was really in two minds on it. Ryan Hedges is probably up there, but for me, I'm going to give it to Lewis Ferguson. We speak about, to go back to what we were speaking about earlier in the episode and also previously in the game against Hibs, about a player that we need to kind of step up more often than not. And certainly last season, I felt he was kind of a bit of a shining light for us in terms of getting us through games and showing his importance. And it was no surprise in the summer that there was loads of interest from down south coming in for him. I think had Ryan Hedges not been injured in the the back end of last season and had managed to keep a bit of better consistency in that, maybe the start of this season, but also performed regularly last season. Again, can't help being injured. It would have probably been him, but yeah, for me, Lewis Ferguson's just going to take it for my outstanding player of 2021.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I did have him in mind as well, but I just thought Ross Mccrory, he had a lot asked of him in various positions, and no matter where he ends up, he seems to put in a good performance. So I just thought I'd give him the credit I feel he deserves.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fair. And this is an interesting category. The next up in the awards is the underrated player of 2021. Callum, who do you have for that?
This one I felt was pretty difficult because for the most part, players were either very, very good at times or there was players that were just absolutely dreadful. So it's hard to kind of pick one under the radar. Maybe you could describe this as somewhat of a cop-out. I'm building it up here. I'm going with my underrated player of 2021 is Funso King Ojo. Now, I understand he's only been back at Aberdeen in the second half of 2021, returning in the summer after a loan at Wigan. But you've got to think of that redemption arc that he's got. Think about that here. He's out the door. He's out on loan at Wigan, of all places, in League One in England. You think he's out the door, he's never coming back. I think in summer, when he came back, he didn't expect to stick around too long. All of a sudden, BK Hacken, he's playing on the wing. He's superb. He's absolutely fantastic. Bombing forward. You got the goal against Hearts at Tynecastle as well. And he just, at times things might not always come off in the midfield. Perhaps he's even played his worst football when he's been in midfield. He's been better on the wing or at right back. And off the pitch, the other adversity that he's come through relating to Dundee United. I just think Funso King Ojo, he'll put in sort of your 7 out of 10 now that since he's come back. Whereas before, at times I can remember some atrocious games. I just think he's given us something we can rely on. Funso Ojo now, and that is very much a welcome sign.
Yeah, I think you can't deny the fact that he very much plays for the badge.
Yes.
He takes pride in every time he plays for the club, regardless of what you think of his performance levels or his ability levels. I feel he gives 100% regardless. And he was considered by me for my underrated player of 2021, but pipping him to the post was Ross Mccrory.
Okay.
I know who you've got down as outstanding player, but I've gone for Ross as being underrated because, like Funso, I think Ross has shown a lot of versatility. Last season was played at centre mid, right back, where he looked very uncomfortable. This season coming in at centre back and growing into the role. And I think the reason why I've kind of put him forward for being my underrated player of 2021 was because of the game against Hedges just recently. Nobody thought we would miss Ross Mccrory at centre-back when being replaced by a Scotland international centre-back in Declan Gallagher. And lo and behold, our defence looked uneven. It just didn't sit right. So I think both Funso and Ross, they've got great versatility across the team. And I think by large elements of our support are underappreciated. So I think both of us have chose well in this category. I would also like to give Dylan McGeoch an honourable mention because I think for the way he filled in earlier in the season, some of his delivery, look at that game against, it was Hearts when the corner he put in for Lewis Ferguson to head home, at Ibrox as well. I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves as well, but for me, it's going to be Ross Mccrory, but I think, both of us have picked well in that category, and it'll be interesting to hear how many people agree or disagree with our thoughts so far.
Very interesting. Please do let us know. What we say is definitely not gospel. In fact, I'd argue the total opposite. So please do, let us know what you think. For that, if I had gone with Ferguson for outstanding, which I did think about it, then Mccrory would have been my underrated player as well. So that is very fair.
Yeah, no, it's fair to say. And as Callum says, do let us know your thoughts. And it's great to kind of see the feedback. I know, Callum, you picked up on some feedback about folk, tuning into the podcast and trying to keep the bad language down to a minimum, given some of you may listen to this on the school run, and it'll probably be a segment that you'll be disappointed to have to break up if you're listening halfway through on the school run, but make you want to listen on the return journey. But it's great to see, and Callum, as you said, it kind of makes what we're doing feel worthwhile.
100%. It's always nice to hear back. I mean, we started this just because we were pretty bored, and to see people actually tuning in. And now I know the particular comment you're mentioning on the school run in East Kilbride, we're going far and wide. Never once did we think that was going to happen. So your support genuinely is much appreciated. It's just fantastic to see, and also just good to have the conversation, the interaction. We give our opinion, you give ours back. Tell us we speak rubbish regardless, whatever it is. Thank you very much. And it has brightened up what has been pretty miserable time otherwise since we started this podcast, to be fair. So thank you very, very much for your support, and it's very much welcome.
Yeah, definitely. Not just East Kilbride, but we've got New York, Perth, Australia. It's global. It is, as Calum says, it's greatly appreciated seeing that feedback, and I'll echo that thoughts. Whether you agree or disagree with what we say, it creates talking points for us. And look, we started, as Calum says, we did this. We were bored in lockdown, and we've kind of got a bit further than we expected it to go. But we're still learning. We're not perfect. We know we're not perfect. And any feedback that comes in, constructive or not, is greatly appreciated.
100%.
And I'm sure the person receiving this award will not appreciate any feedback on this. It's the worst player of 2021, Callum. And Callum, is probably an award that there's loads of players could have taken home, but who have you singled out as the worst player for 2021?
It's a very, very tough one for me. There's certain players who've got the expectation when they came in, you expect them to perform better. I don't think I'm being sly in who I'm referencing there. There's, players such as they've been around the whole season and they've not performed, whether they've been out due to injury. It's not necessarily their fault, but even when they were playing at the start of 2021, pretty poor end product, not great. I'm waffling because I can't decide. I honestly can't decide. I'm sorry, Declan Gallagher. I might go for you. What?
No, it's interesting. I think it's a bit harsh, but it's a name that
there's three in my mind that I can't decide between. I maybe jumped the gun a little bit with Declan Gallagher there, but Glenn, you go first for this one.
Okay. Well, bear in mind our next category after worst player is the underperforming player of 2021.
Wow, okay. Yeah, good point.
So I had Matty Longstaff down as the worst player of 2021, given, just to quote what you said there, the kind of expectation level, the hype around signing a Premier League midfielder, probably just gained hype because he scored a goal against Man United, but probably give some honourable mentions to Flo Canberry. Again, a player coming in with some expectation who really was a flop. Fraser Hornby as well. I know injury didn't work out for him, but a player I personally had high hopes for, but he's only gone on to play one game for Ream this season. So a player whose career's really nosedived since coming to the Northeast. And I suppose on the same length as Matty Longstaff, if you want to pick him, you've got to then put up Austin Samuels, a player that's come in and done very little, and Jack Gurr as well probably fills in there as well. But for me, it's a toss of the coin between Flo Canberry and Matty Longstaff, and I think it lands just on Matty Longstaff.
Yeah, I think I'd maybe jump the gun with Declan Gallagher. I think, yeah, okay, he'll probably be my underperforming, let's be fair. But I would probably tend to agree in terms of Matty Longstaff. Matty Kennedy, another one that I was thinking, however. Given, I don't know what's going on with him right now. Is it injury? Is it?
Yeah, he has a back injury, but to be honest, I'm filing him under Michael Devlin, and players that I've completely forgot actually are involved in Aberdeen.
Yeah. Another player that might seem harsh that could be thrown in there Niall McGinn.
Yes, I do think that is harsh. That's who, when you were waffling and your expectation, I actually thought that's who you were going to go for.
Okay.
But I think that would be, personally, I think that would be harsh.
Okay, I think I will agree with you on Matty Longstaff. I've come to my decision because, as you mentioned, personally as a Newcastle fan or whatever, I watch Newcastle sometimes. I don't know why, it just adds to the miserableness. He came with expectation, a Premier League club. He's obviously scored 2 goals against Manchester United. At times when I've watched Newcastle, he has been pretty good in the Premier League as well. But when he came up here, he looks like a boy amongst men, essentially, and it was pretty bad. I think due to the expectation, that's who we're going to have to go with as well.
But as you can see, we were very much spoiled for choice.
I know.
That category. Matty Kennedy was not even a name I had written down on here. But I think we're going to be agreed on the next category, the underperforming player of 2021. Declan Gallagher for me, and I think based on the expectation of signing the Motherwell captain, how well he'd played for Scotland, the Serbia game in particular, and had looked good in a back three at international level. And he's just not fitted in at Aberdeen. Whether it's the formation that we're playing, whether or not it's just his age catching up with him. I don't know if earlier in the season he was just left brutally exposed by Calvin Ramsey bombing forward, and there was space in behind, and he was just being dragged out of position. Whether or not he couldn't form the partnership with Ross Mccrory that David Bates has formed, I'm not sure. But similar to the likes of Matty Longstaff, Declan Gallagher was a player that I had lots of high hopes for, and whenever Declan has come in and played, it's just not worked out for him. So for me, he would be the underperforming player of 2021. Yeah,
I think going with him for worse is probably harsh, considering we've not even seen enough of him probably to categorise him as that. Yeah, underperforming, I'd say. We had big expectations when he came in. As you say, he played for Scotland, was key in getting us to the Euros. He was at the Euros as well, but he didn't play. It's just a bit frustrating. We thought this leader as well coming in from Motherwell and captain to them. For whatever reason, it's not worked out. Perhaps still time, but also even then, just the inability to even get a run of games without being taken out of the team for whether injury or
inability
performances. Yeah, exactly. So but also I'd like to add a couple, maybe harsh at times, honourable mentions for this underperforming. Niall McGinn, I mean, it's probably not his fault. Age is catching up. He's perhaps, thrown in situations where he's never going to help influence the game, but he's still thrown in there, and that for that reason. Johnny Hayes, maybe. I think when we re-signed him, we had these high expectations of he'd be exactly what he liked before he left, which he's not. And at times, even his crossing could be enough for him to get this category for me at times. And also perhaps Joe Lewis, and not because he's been particularly terrible. At times he has been, but it's also because we know how good he can be, and that's just the slight, lapses that have let him down. But that would be very, very, very harsh, because at times he has bailed us out massively also. But it's just because we know how good he can be. That's why. Yeah, no.
Fair comments all round. I suppose if you're going to throw Niall McGinn in there, you could also throw Conor McLennan in there as well. Maybe feels harsh on a youngster, but given the kind of some of the performances of the youth academy players, he's maybe probably been the most underperforming of the lot that have come through in 2021. Now, player to look out for in 2022, Callum. Who have you gone for this?
Now, it had to be between the fullbacks for me. And I think the obvious choice, we all know the obvious choices, but I'm going to come for the other one. Jack McKenzie, I'm going with. I think if he stays fit and gets more experience, a run of games, let's be honest, in terms of a footballing career, professionally, he's not played that much games. If he gets a run of games towards the end of the season, can pick up that form. He said he was working on his ability to go forward as well when he first started breaking into the team. I think we have seen that improve, and it will only do so more with more experience and more time. I'm going with him because at times he goes maybe under the radar slightly as well, with Ramsey performing so well on the other side at a younger age as well. But I'm going with Jack McKenzie, and also he's more likely to be here for all of 2022.
Yes, and that is why Calvin Ramsey is not my player to watch out for in 2022 as well, because I also do not think he will be here this time next year. Jack McKenzie is a good shout, good reasoning behind your choice as well, Callum. But I've gone for a player who is currently out on loan and performing well in League Two. It's young Connor Barron, playing with top of the league Kelty Hearts just now. I think good experience in that league. Yes, I know Kelty are pretty much steamrolling that league despite their 5-1 defeat the other day. But I think playing at that level is good exposure. I know Ryan Duncan is at Peterhead, and the club also have high hopes for him. But there's been a lot of hype around Connor Barron. He's in and around the Scotland youth setups as well. So for me, I think he's maybe a player that might come back to Aberdeen in the summer. See, you speak about players being integrated back. Look at the guys like Kevin Hanratty currently for Martin as well and doing well. I think Michael Rose as well. He's a guy that's at Falkirk. Ruth. Yeah,
Michael Rose is currently
there's a throwback
somewhere in the lower leagues in England, perhaps Coventry.
Yeah, Michael.
I don't know.
Michael Roof, yeah. So someone like him, these sort of players that are gaining league experience and coming back. But I think Calvin Ramsey would have been the easy pick. So I've gone for Connor Barron instead.
Fair enough. You've gone even more left field than me. So
yeah,
but I think it's very fair. I think Ryan Duncan was probably one that I had considered in terms of a creative spark in midfield, which we are somewhat lacking at times, and then especially
which is exactly what Connor Barron is as well.
Yeah, so there we go. But interesting. I think they are players to watch out for, definitely.
But again, you're now pinning your hopes on 16, 17-year-olds. But it's great to see that these guys are being trusted enough to go out and get league experience and not just playing the reserve football, which may not always benefit them in the same manner because with the greatest of respect to League One and League Two, they're going to get a bit of a kicking and a bit of a tough time in the midfield of their respective clubs. So it would be a good learning curve for them.
Yeah, 100%. And I think talking about those youngsters probably takes us nicely onto the future, the hopes for 2022. Glenn, you kick us off this time.
Oh, check you throwing in the links now. Well, based on what I've already said, I would like to see some more consistency on the pitch. It would be great to see us qualify for Europe, but a successful Scottish Cup run. It's fair to say we've been starved of some decent cup success in recent years. Success for me is not reaching semi-finals. That's not success. But even you look back to last season as well, the manner in which we went out both cups, we've already been dumped out of the League Cup by Wraith. It's been well documented, the fallout from that. I think if fans are allowed to return to stadium January time, if that is given the go ahead, obviously we've got the game against Edinburgh City to look forward to, but hopefully we can go on the start of a good Scottish Cup run. For me, that would be, especially if our league form is going to remain inconsistent, I would like to see us go deep in the Scottish Cup.
That's fair. For mentioning the Wraith game, just before I get on to my point, I got made fun of on the train by Wraith fans on the way back from the game against Hedges going back to Kirkcaldy. They were like, even our striker scored. He's only scored one goal this season. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Aberdeen Football Club. You suck. Moving on. I hope for 2022, I would agree in terms of a cup run. Winning a cup would be one of my hopes and expectations. Whether that's the Scottish Cup this season or perhaps the Premier Sports Cup next season, which will be concluded, I presume, also before the end of 2022. So there we go.
I'm not sure on that now because of the Winter World Cup.
Oh, true. Actually, very good point. But then will the season start earlier? Oh, it's going to be a whole nightmare. I'm not ready for that. God, 2022 is going to be awful. Regardless, a cup would be fantastic, something to celebrate. Obviously, we had 2014. That was good. But it's been a while again. And we need to start sort of getting back in there. We look at Hedges recently, making to another cup final and things. Why can't we do that and then hopefully go on to win it? That'd be fantastic. But also, we've mentioned the youngsters, the integration of some more youngsters. We saw Calvin Ramsey. Hopefully, we can have a few more sort of emulate him and break into the first team. But other than that, sort of happy with the way things are going. A sort of steady little bit of progress now. Hopefully, we'll just carry on that upward trajectory.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice way to end the last show of 2021. And I suppose, Callum, we can both agree that it's the sooner rather than later fans are allowed back into the stadiums next year at full capacity, not restricted capacity, is also a hope for us next year. But thank you for your contributions this year, and thank you to those of you tuning in for staying with us throughout 2021. As you'll have just gathered, it's not exactly been the prettiest of years, but hopefully next year we will see some success. So from myself and Callum, I want to wish you all a very happy new year, and we'll be back in the middle of January. We're going to take a couple of weeks off with the shutdown now, so we will be back before previewing the next Aberdeen game in January. So have a good one, everybody.
Have a good one. We'll see you next year. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe if you're new. Follow us wherever you're listening at RTG_podcast on Twitter, at RTG.podcast on Instagram, Callum Wright2 on Twitter, and Glenn, your Twitter.
Schroeder92.
Thanks very much for tuning in. Have a happy new year.